If you would like to know the best approach to optimizing your health, you clicked on the right video. Hi, I'm Dr. Cori Stern, and welcome to my channel, Take Control of Your Health. It's been a really long time since I had a guest on, and I'm very excited about this guest who I've been trying to pin down for over a year now. Not her fault, but busy people, hard to schedule properly. I have with me today Caitlin Woolery, who is an clinical herbalist and naturopathic practitioner, and she's absolutely brilliant. And I wanted to have a conversation with her because her viewpoints on health resonate with mine completely. And I think we're going to have a great conversation, and everybody's going to learn so much from it. So, welcome, Caitlin, and thank you so much for taking the time out to do this for me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Corey. I'm really excited for this conversation too, and I can't believe a year flew by. Like, how did that even happen?
I know it's
Thank you.
ridiculous.
I am really happy we're having these conversations too, because our Facebook energies resonate a lot. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
So, first of all, tell me what attracted you to becoming an herbalist, in a few words. I just want to let you know, I don't think you know this about me, that when I was 15, I cured a chronic throat infection with herbs, that I just figured out on my own. And that's what led me down this path to begin with. So I have such a strong love for herbs, and my heart is like probably an herb, I think.
Yeah.
So so I really honor the work that you do. But what motivated you to do this?
I love that. My heart is an herb. That makes me want to cry. I love them that much too. That's fascinating. You cured a throat disease randomly without training at 15. That's like instantly, I'm like, oh, many past lives of doing herbalism. I'm sure you have. I was actually on track in college to be a lawyer, and I had never been exposed to herbs, a very mainstream Western standard American diet upbringing. And I was in college and I walked by this herb store called Elephant Pharmacy. And I walked in and I saw these women with dreadlocks. I'd never seen dreadlocks, and they were behind the herbal counters. And I was just mesmerized by them. They were like unicorns to me. And I was like, I must work in this place. And so I applied for a job as a cashier. And that was my exit out of mainstream thinking and programming, and the entrance into what would become the rest of my life with the medicines. So, yeah.
Wow, that's like so random, but yet we figure that probably it was definitely meant to happen somehow, right?
Always.
Um, so one of the things I wanted to talk about, which you go into in detail in some of the posts I've read, and by the way, I just want to say that she is extremely outspoken about her viewpoints on natural health, and I am too. But uh, she's much. Let's put it this way. I feel like you're more willing to really put yourself out there, and I don't think you care if if you offend anyone. I'm just maybe a little more careful, but I prefer your style. Being from New York, I just do like to. I do appreciate somebody that speaks their mind, but I want to talk about this idea that you don't really get sick unless there is an imbalance, nutrition deficiency, um, something wrong in there, right? So a lot of people have this idea that they get sick because somebody who's sick breathes on them, and then they catch that, whatever it is, or they have infections. But where does it come from? How does that really happen? I want to have that conversation because this is something I try to explain to people all the time, and people are very programmed by conventional medicine to think in terms of I got sick, I had these symptoms, And now I need this remedy, and this remedy could be a drug, it could be something natural, but it's still this symptom management thinking.
Mhm.
What's wrong with that picture?
Mm. It's such a good point, and there's so many layers to this. First, I want to say that if herbalists were under licensure by the government, I might be more quiet on Facebook.
Got
Ooh,
it.
they haven't gotten us yet, but if I'd had a doctor before my name or any capital letters after my name that the government licensed, I would probably be more trepid. But yeah, so I get to be a little louder. So it's a great question. It's like I think probably in the industry the ultimate question right now because especially since 2020, the big outbreaks and has really brought up this question of contagion versus terrain and germ theory versus terrain. I'm assuming because of who you are, your audience knows a lot about the difference between the two. Um, the herbalists have always been the terrain theorists. So when we talk about is the disease caught, is it contagious? That's part of germ theory, which is relatively new. It came with the Flexner report and Louis Pasteur and the takeover of Western medicine. But before that, prior to that, all of the herbalists had been terrain theorists, specifically tissue terrain theorists. And this is Chinese medicine, they're tissue terrain theorists. My type of herbalist, where I'm a physiomedical vitalist herbalist, we practice according to tissue and terrain. And so the foundational theory of this is that the terrain being how clean and balanced and how much in homeostasis is the inner fish tank, how clean is the fish tank in the terrain. And then how do you really determine that, right? And so this is a big piece of the conversation that's actually missing in the terrain theory model is that you gauge how clean the terrain is by the health and the state of the tissues. So how does one determine that? And so we have these ancient methods of determining what the terrain is, and it works in six polarities. So are the tissues of the terrain hot or cold? Are they damp or dry? Are the tissues tight or lax? And if the tissue, inner terrain of the body, becomes out of balance and swings in any one direction, we set ourselves up for disease. And I'll give a quick example of how this looks and then turn it over to you to hear your follow-up thoughts. So say we have tissues that have become too dry or too damp. So if the fluid is not balanced in the tissues, that means that the waste from cellular metabolism is not being carried out of the body. So it accumulates if it's too damp or too dry. And then we have a pathogen, a parasite, a gram-negative bacteria that comes to the scene and eats up that metabolic waste. Now, germ theory, contagion theory would say we caught that thing. Terrain theory would say that bacteria came to help us, to assist us to clean up the debris, and then maybe became opportunistic and grew too big because we didn't clean the tank or balance the tissues. We didn't moisture properly. And so, really, it's like, what is the chicken and what is the egg? And we would say that it's the balance of the tissue terrain that is the chicken and that lays the egg of the bacteria, for lack of a better metaphor. But yeah.
So then the next question would be, well, how does the terrain get out of balance? How does the tissue become imbalanced? And there's a few different um, components that feed into that, and not to use the word feed because I'm actually thinking nutritionally, but when one of the main things is when your drainage channels are not draining. So when gunk is getting backed up in the body, you have different organs that are responsible for drainage. Your lymph system is your main drainage system, and that's your spleen, your all your lymph organs, all your lymph nodes and lymph channels. Your bowels are a drainage channel, your kidneys are a drainage channel, and your liver. So when those things, and I talk about this so much because if people are going to go for the pathogens, if they're going to try to kill the parasites or kill off the bad bacteria or whatever else, the fungus, yeast, all of those things, if they're going to go in there with whatever drugs or with even with natural supplements and try to kill them, they're not going to get better if their drainage pathways are not working. They're just either going to feel sicker, more symptomatic, or that's called a die-off reaction, or they'll just grow back. They'll just come back. Never really going to go away. So then the next question is, well, how does it happen that your drainage pathways get clogged up? Any thoughts on that?
So that's all going to come down to lifestyle, diet, thinking, and trauma. And then from there, we have set constitutional patterns that we're born into. Some people, if we took the Ayurvedic model, for example, some people are more kapha and they tend to have stuck lymph and boggy, they hold weight and water and mass. Other people may be more pitta and then have more fire, so they're prone to hot tissues. Vata people would be prone to very dry, brittle tissues. So that can be a foundational principle to, being out of balance. And then if we're ignorant to our constitutions, we don't have language and wisdom around this, and we happen to eat a food that aggravates our constitution repetitively, like a person that's too hot is eating cayenne and ginger all day long, and then all that fire is just drying out the lymph in their body and they don't realize it. So we have our foundational patterns of imbalance that every human incarnates with, and then we can either be pacifying those or aggravating those based on our lifestyle choices, our food, and how we move, and so on and so forth. And it really is empowering when you look at it that way, because then we're the ones making all the choices to or the actions that we can either be hurting ourselves with or empowered to heal ourselves with. So to me, in terms of the how I've been trained, those are pretty foundational to why someone would get backed up with these types of pathogens in the first place. And that's where the herbs come in too, is that the herbs are, say someone's lymph is totally dried out and their tissues are dried, we would use then herbs that have the energetics of moistening. So then we take an herb and we give that moisture from the herb, like marshmallow root, slippery elm, and it lubricates those tissues again. And then the fluid's moving, and then all of a sudden the parasites and the bacteria just disappear on their own because they're not needed. The body then takes care of it itself. Nature and the parasites are just as the bacteria are just as smart as us, So when we balance out, they know they can come and they know to come and go when they're needed and when they're not. Like we're all in a big organism together. So less scary, I think.
Well, I mean, our bodies are made of trillions of organisms, actually. Most people don't realize that there's organisms crawling all over them and all inside them, and all your mucous membranes have a microbiome, your lungs, your urinogenital tract, your gut, obviously. There's even probably in your brain as well. Kidneys have all these organisms, and most of them are your friends. They're your little friends that are doing really important work in your body to help maintain your homeostasis. What happens, what we're talking about really is when some of the ones that are not as helpful start to overgrow, create an imbalance in your microbiome, and then that leads to these other pathogenic related symptoms. And you can't fix any of it if you don't do the basic foundational stuff that you need to do for yourself. For example, even dehydration can cause a backup in your ability to drain properly. So many people are chronically dehydrated. So many, either because they're not drinking enough water or they're drinking too much caffeine and alcohol, which are diuretics and pull fluid out of their tissue, or they're drinking the wrong kind of water. And the wrong kind of water does not dehydrate you. I know that you have an affinity for amazing natural spring water, right? I've seen you talk about that. And yeah, so do I.
It's I feel like it's one of my reasons for being on the planet. Like I'll literally drive around in different states and just hunt the springs down. It is so clear to my soul how sacred and important it is to consume water that's living, that's, the easy fourth phase structured H3O3 water and maybe H3O2, living water that's moving and eddying with oxygen. So critical. And I've literally like fasted and then gone to a spring and drink it out with all the oxygen in it, and you can feel high, like it literally elevates you into a different dimension. And yes, so I'm really passionate about water. And what is happening today, we're in an absolute water crisis with hydration, and everyone's 8 ounces a day, but it's been the minerals are filtered out, and then that's causing a crisis. The kidneys have to work really hard to move all that water through, and then it's leaching the minerals from the bones because empty water is a solvent trying to reconstitute itself. And the hydration issue, it's interesting when I'm in clinic, I read people's tongues to see what their terrain is like. And the people who have the most dehydrated tongues, I'll say, "Oh gosh, your tissues are really dehydrated." But I drink water all day long. They're the biggest water drinkers are the most dehydrated, have the most dehydrated terrain. And it takes major education to deprogram the whole way that our society approaches hydration topics. So thank you for bringing that up because yeah, that's like a numero uno passion of mine.
Yeah, I 100% agree that I spend a lot of my time trying to deprogram people. There's so much false data about water. It's almost insane because God created it perfectly for living things on planet Earth. And you should not be messing with it. It's just one of those things that I really I get a little bit aggravated when people are talking about how they're changing the pH of the water or they're doing crazy things to the water. I'm like, no, no, no. That does not belong in your body. That's not what we want. I live in the middle of a big city, so obviously there are no, natural springs around. So I envy what you're doing with that. I have I have encountered springs in my lifetime and drank straight out of them, and I understand the feeling that you get when you do that. But I have at least I have a water filter um, that attempts to reproduce natural spring water. So it keeps the minerals in, it restructures the water. Water in nature doesn't sit. You're not supposed to drink sitting water. And, in cities, you have reservoirs that for sitting water that then go through a disinfectant process with all kinds of chemicals and it becomes toxic. Not to mention the fact that they add fluoride to protect your teeth. So having an amazing filter that takes the bad stuff out and leaves the good stuff in is very helpful. I will not drink any other water but my own water. I can't, like, if I'm not in my house, if I bring water with me, if I'm on a trip, I have a really hard time if I can't bring enough water with me. So, yeah.
What kind of filter do you use that keeps minerals and actually restores the eddying movement?
I can't really explain it because it doesn't have a name. It's made by a guy that is a water expert and he just figured out how to do it. And what he explained, I have a video, I interviewed him, He's kind of a genius. Like I didn't understand half of what he was saying because it was too scientific for me. Um, but one of the things he explained is that filters need to be a specific length in order to get all the toxins out. Um, which I didn't know because most people are using little filters. You know, if you're filtering your water in one of those pitcher type filters or your refrigerator filter, water filter, it's not really doing anything. It's not getting most of the toxins out. Um, and then a lot of people use a filter called zero water, and zero water takes all the toxins out, but it also takes all the minerals out, and it causes the water to become acidic. And I had been using that before I knew this, and it was definitely making us all sick. We were all getting frequent symptoms, including my dogs. So I felt so bad when I found that out. But live and learn. So I don't know the exact scientific mechanism of this filter. Um, but I do have a write-up on it that I can actually put a link to. I think it's might also be on my website. I'm not sure if it's a resource on my website, and that may explain it. But my bottom line is a lot of times I don't actually want to know how a thing works as long as I know that it does work and I see the results. It's just
Bandwidth.
like, yeah, exactly. I always tell people I'm not a scientist. I can't explain everything that I do or how everything works. But I'm very outcome oriented. So when I see a thing that gets results, then I agree that it's good.
I'm with you on that. We have to pick and
Mhm.
choose
Yeah,
which tips we master and then use discernment and trust with the rest of it.
right. So along just moving along the whole idea of pathogens growing in an imbalanced terrain, I thought you write a few words about um, H. pylori. So H. pylori is a type of bacteria that conventional medicine will pinpoint as, let's say, the underlying cause of gastric ulcers, stomach ulcers. And what's the story behind that? What's the truth?
So it's angle. I think I look at it as an angle issue. So Western medicine would say it's a bacteria that comes into the stomach and causes ulceration. We would look at it almost the exact opposite, and we would say there's probably pre-existing ulceration and or low stomach acid that is then, because that's the tissue terrain, ulcerated and low in acid, allowing the bacteria to exist, and that it probably on some level is there serving a bizarre purpose that we don't realize because Western medicine doesn't study the benefits of bacteria very much. So they would call it an infection because bacteria can produce, when they're at a ratio, they have their own little Krebs cycle and their cellular metabolic respiration that produces off-gassing, and that off-gassing can cause symptoms in us depending on what the bacteria is, if it's SIBO or H. pylori related. Um, so then Western would say, oh, you're having all these uncomfortable symptoms. Well, we're going to test. Oh, we see this H. pylori. That's the problem. It's the bacteria that's the problem. Here comes your antibiotic dose. Person feels great for a little while. Root cause hasn't been evaluated and diagnosed and treated within the tissue state of the stomach. And so 3 to 6 months later, we have a far worse case of H. pylori that probably by then is compounded also with something like SIBO or a lower gut issue of dysbiosis, and then the merry-go-round goes around from there. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and just to define SIBO in case somebody listening doesn't know what it is, it's small intestine bacterial overgrowth, which is a very popular diagnosis now as well. But we see it as kind of all the same. there's an imbalance in tissue and then an overgrowth of maybe things that are not considered good, but may be actually serving a purpose that is not well understood. And, on the topic of low stomach, let's stick with that for a minute, because that's also, there's so much false data about that as well. So a lot of people are symptomatic with, let's say, things like acid reflux, what's also known as reflux disease, or just people have heartburn or a burning sensation in their esophagus or their stomach, which can also happen with an ulcer. And it's all blamed on too much acid. So the solution very often is a drug that inhibits your stomach's production of acid. And so you stop producing acid. By the way, that acid is there for a very important reason. You need it to actually digest nutrients. So when you stop the production of acid, then you create nutritional deficiencies in the body and you're creating more imbalance. If you're on those things for 10, 20, 30 years, and then one day you wake up with some signs of dementia because you haven't been absorbing your nutrients for that long, and you go to your medical doctor, I guarantee you they're not going to say, oh, that must have been that antacid we gave you 10 years ago or 20 years ago. No, they're not going to say that. They're just going to give you a drug for dementia. So a lot of times people with these symptoms actually have an underproduction of stomach acid. And in which case, one of the things I do is I can give them a supplement that has some hydrochloric acid in it to start with to help with the situation until we get to the root cause.
Yeah, it's really important too. That's got to be one of the most insidious pieces of Western medicine because you're the the cascade of misunderstanding is just so horrendous. Most acid reflux is low stomach acid. That is the chi is rebellious, we call it, moving the wrong direction because the nervous system is dysregulated. So it's a nervous system problem at its core for most people, a chewing problem at its core, a food combining problem at its core, a stress problem at its core. And then when the low acid, appearing as high acid in most cases, is diagnosed by the Western doctor and they give them the PPI or the antacid, they're literally turning off the engine to that person's car. Like the upper gut organs, the upper gut secretions, the stomach acid, the enzymes that come out of the pancreas, and the bile that comes out of the gallbladder liver system. That's considered in all the ancient systems Ayurveda. That is our powerhouse. The heat, they call it the Agni, is critical for everything else in the body to function well. If we don't have that heat, that acidity, minerals are acid bound, so we're not going to be absorbing those minerals. That's why like the antacid and the alkaline water thing is crazy, is that we need that acidic heat in there. And so to turn that off for someone so that they can't, like you said, absorb minerals and then they have osteoporosis 10 years later and can't understand why their brain, like you said, the dementia. I mean, it's a horrific downward slope from that moment. And that's where holistic medicine really shines because it's like, how do you regulate your nervous system? What can we do to increase your stomach acid? Can I teach you how to chew? Like I tell people, I'd be out of a job if you chewed your food 30 times each bite. Like I would, no one would be sick. So yeah, we get to come in and really help people like see the light when it comes to this when they were stuck in these systems like you're describing, be it the H. pylori, the PPIs, what have you. So it's really cool.
It's funny, you just made me think about my dog who is about 14 and he's missing a lot of teeth. And all these years I've been giving him these treats. They're hard treats. They're all like completely just dehydrated meat, but they're solid. You have to chew them. And all of a sudden, like maybe a month ago, he started having diarrhea and then he started vomiting. And he was just really dragging his poor little butt around. And I finally figured out that he wasn't chewing his treats, he was just swallowing them whole. And they were completely messing his entire digestive system.
Yeah.
So I had to switch his treats to something that they're softer, but it won't matter if he swallows them whole. So now I'm giving him grass-fed beef heart, which is much softer than what I was giving him before. So that's just a good example of how chewing can really affect your ability to digest properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I watched my ex-boyfriend and he never chewed. He was a bodybuilder and then inhaled, literally inhaled.
Mhm.
And I watched him drain his stomach acid because of it. And then he got a small bowel obstruction and had a foot of his intestine had to get cut out. And I was like, it's chew, you chew. We gotta chew. And then he's all better. He just starts chewing. And I'm like, we don't even need to give you herbs, just chew. And he's good. It's like, so this is the first part of digestion. People don't realize our teeth is our first organ for a reason. So important.
And the saliva too, the enzymes in the saliva begin the digestion process. So you need to mix your food with your saliva in order for it to start the process of digestion. And
Chinese.
yeah,
Oh,
go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go.
Oh, I was gonna just follow up with that. The Chinese medicine proverb is chew your tea. So like even chew your tea and what do they say? Drink your food and chew your liquids. So make the food the consistency of the liquid before you swallow and even chew the thing that's already the liquid. Like everything in their health system was based around principles like that. So yes, chewing. So critical and simple and free.
I'm going to start paying more attention to how much I'm chewing. Thank you for reminding me.
I hope I don't give you a neurosis. I sit there sometimes and I'm like 69.
I think I chew enough, but I'm going to pay attention to during my next meal.
Let me know what
Um,
you think,
okay,
where you
I
are on
will.
this.
Yeah, I will. I'll count. Yeah. I wanted to talk also a little bit. This is kind of a slightly different topic, but people have been actually asking me for a video on this. So I thought maybe we would piggyback it because it's kind of, even though it seems like it's a different topic, it's going to be end up being the same principle. I want to talk about skin stuff and acne, things like that, because your skin really is an important organ that will express an imbalance in the terrain with different symptoms. So, acne is one of the many symptoms that we see when
Your computer cut out at the end of that sentence that you see when what?
there's a terrain imbalance.
Yeah. So I was trained that that typically is a four body system domino effect. That it begins with the gut. The toxins in the gut back up, gut becomes porous, as you know, I'm sure you've educated your people all about the leaky gut fun times. And then the portal vein gets clogged with the vein, the massive vein to the liver from all those toxins. Liver gets stagnant, then the lymph gets stagnant. So lymph and blood circulating around gets stagnant with toxins. And then the skin being our porous or detox organ, those toxins are coming out of the skin. And of course, we're going to see pus and all kinds of white blood cell neutrophils and phagocytes and, nasty acne pus stuff going along with that. So gut, liver, lymph. And then for a lot of people, because our vulnerabilities come out when our hormones swing, for women especially, can be connected to hormones as well. So that's how I view it clinically. And so liver and lymphatic flushing, diet, um, diet. Oh, that reminds me of something you said earlier, actually wanted to share is that like when we're talking about the gut bacteria is highly connected to skin And something that I've learned working with labs, microbiome labs and mosaic labs and running labs on people is that like even if we're deemed to have a bad bacteria that's causing acne or causing some kind of an issue, our gut bacteria are actually like growing and existing in ratios as a response to input. So it's like we're inputting food and signals and thoughts, and then the gut bacteria is responding to it. So where yeah, it's like out of the victimhood of it's not randomly happening to you. So if you have acne, chances are the input that your bacteria is responding to that is highly connected to your skin. We have the acid mantle barrier and bacteria that cover all of our epithelial tissues. The input just needs to be changed. So lots of lymphatic flushing herbs. I've seen all kinds of cases of acne, cystic boil type acne clear up with really good authentic delivery of lymphatic and liver, like herbs brewed, you know, how our ancestors did it. That flushes the system and the lymph like no other for taking care of anything that's a mass on the skin. I've seen it shrink moles. I've seen lymphatic and liver flushing, eliminate skin tags, like anywhere where the skin is not expressing clearly and healthily, liver and lymphatic flushing. That's the holy grail in my opinion.
You want to mention some of your favorite lymphatic and liver flushing herbs?
Absolutely. So my my favorite liver flushing formula, which I'm actually after we are off today, going to go purchase at the apothecary to do a 3-week cleanse. Burdock root, dandelion root, yellow dock root. I do not put milk thistle in the brew and decoction. It's usually best taken as capsules. Milk thistle doesn't do well as a tea. So burdock, dandelion, yellow dock, barberry. That's my fourth favorite one. Blue pearl is the Chinese medicine superstar for liver, but doesn't taste very good. So those four for liver will pretty much take care of all of phase one and phase two liver detox. And decoction is the way to go. That's where you're boiling a couple gallons of water and then putting a few ounces of each herb in, and you're really simmer boiling that for about 90 minutes covered. And all the ancients have brewed their medicine like that, as opposed to, a lot of herbs nowadays are standardized in contract manufactured labs, and they've lost a lot of their soul and potency because of it. So yeah, the ancient brewing is really important. And then for lymphatic flushing, my hero, when it comes to the skin, cleavers and burdock are the hero herbs for skin. They work on lymphatic kidneys and specifically skin. Calendula, red root is amazing if the nodes of the lymphatic system are all backed up. Red root will cleanse the little nodes that have to filter everything through, and really will clean the spleen out as well. So let's see, burdock, calendula, cleavers, red root. I'm not a fan of echinacea for lymphatic cleansing. It's been horribly misunderstood within the industry. Um, I feel like I'm missing some important ones. Knotweed, Japanese knotweed. Yeah.
So for people that are unwilling to do the decoction, that are not willing to drink the stuff, I do have all of this stuff in capsules and tablets. There is the absolute exquisite beauty of taking the live plant, the whole herb, not isolating components of it. And that's what a lot of synthetic or all synthetic supplements are isolates. They're not complexes, they're not compounds. So when you take the whole herb or the whole food, whatever it is, it has everything in it that the body needs to be able to utilize it properly. All of the enzymes, there's so much stuff in there that it's not only about the active constituent, there's so many parts to it. But there are people that are simply unwilling, unable, for whatever reason, to make it themselves or to drink it. Some people just can't put on their big big girl and boy pants and drink something that doesn't taste good to them. So, or sometimes kids also. So, we do have everything you mentioned, we have in capsules. But I know that cleavers, so being a city girl, I don't have too much of an opportunity to grow my own stuff, but I've tried to. I know cleavers is pretty hardy and easy to grow, um, and it grows in the wild, very easy to actually find it yourself. Um, but the good news is that you can actually contact Caitlin, and she does offer one-on-one consults, to help you figure out what is the best remedies for your situation. And something else, you also have a very inexpensive educational forum for people, right?
Yeah, community where people can come learn about herbs and healing. And it's a membership of $22 a month. We meet for workshops and live calls and have discussion forums. People can ask questions and continue their health journey in a group transformation setting.
That's such a valuable service. It's a great idea too. I think I want to do that.
Me too.
Um,
I can help you.
so thanks. I'm going to put her contact information in the description of this video so you can reach out to her if you are interested in getting help from her. And as always, you can also reach out to me for health improvement program consults and supplement recommendation consults. I have so many more things I want to talk about, but our time is up. I had so many more things that I thought of saying while we were talking, but maybe we'll have to do a part two. I don't know, just putting it out there.
That
Um,
sounds
any last thoughts you want to share before we end?
I wanted to thank you for being one of the people that's holding the integrity of the full spectrum herbs during encapsulation. There are brands out there that are doing herbal capsules and tinctures, and they're maintaining the quality and the full spectrum, and they are potent and incredible and amazing. And so, thank you for maintaining that integrity within the industry. I really, really appreciate that. So, yeah, I just wanted to. Thank you for that, and thank you for having me on and for the amazing conversation and nice to meet your people, your tribe.
Thanks for being an absolutely loving and very interesting guest. And I hope that we'll be meeting again. Please don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful, because that does help more people to find it. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you've been meaning to do that and haven't had a chance yet. And last and most importantly, please share this video with anyone that you know that you think would benefit from the information. I hope to see you all again with some more important health information. Until then, please stay healthy.